Fairfield Public Access Television is excited and proud to share with you a treasure of Fairfield, and that is Ben Taylor. Mark Shafer and myself, Susan Kessel, are here today in the Carnegie Building in the Art Association's room, and we're going to talk about the Fairfield Art Association's permanent collection of Ben Taylor's work.
Yeah, since his death last year, his executor, Martha Flinschba, gave us permission to go through Ben's portfolio, I should say portfolios, because there were just, my goodness, there was a lot of artwork he had hidden away that nobody knew about. Things dating back to the 1920s, the 1930s. And basically we're going to mount a retrospective of his work, and the Art Association is framing these items. Some are already framed, but we'll frame the things that are not. And I assume they'll be part of the permanent collection and then be hung in the hospitals and other...
Yes, the permanent collection is the Fairfield Art Association's collection of artwork, some major pieces such as Lizansky that are on display. There are a few at the library, mostly at the Jefferson County Hospital, and that's primarily the place that we keep our collection, and we do accept donations. And Mark was really instrumental in getting these pieces for us from the Ben Taylor estate. And Ben Taylor was a member of the Art Association for years.
Oh, I'm sure he was. He and Lucille, I'm sure, were charter members.
I'm sure.
If they weren't, they should have been.
But he was so involved in the museum all those years. And when I was active 25 years ago, 30, with the Art Association, I did not know that he was an artist. Did you always know?
I kind of knew. I didn't know right away, but I became aware of Ben and Lucille back in 1969 when I first started doing the series of Fairfield drawings that eventually became a book. And they loaned me lots of photographs from their extensive collection. And there are two pieces that were hanging in their living room that, oh yeah, Ben did those way, way back. But he wasn't a real active artist in later years, although some of the display cases up here in the museum have little diagrams, like the Native American collection and the Roman antiquities have little schematic drawings that he did to identify each piece. So he did signs, like for the Bonneville cabin, that he lettered that sign that's inside. So he did a number of things off and on over the years, but not the body of work that we found after he passed away. I mean, I know Martha, the Flinschbas were real close to the Taylors. Her husband, oh my gosh. I do this all the time on TV. What is his name?
And now that you said that, I am like...
Martha's husband.
Fred.
Fred, thank you. I've known Fred. My mother went to school with Fred. It's like, shame on me. Anyway, Fred, I do remember you. Fred's family, his parents were good friends of the Taylors, of Ben's parents. And so they maintained that friendship over the years. And Ben and Lucille did not have children, so Fred and Martha's grandchildren were kind of like great-grandnieces and nephews. No, just nieces?
I'm not sure.
Oh, well, I think just nieces. Anyway, so the family was real close, and that was the connection with Martha being the executor.
Okay.
And I have known Martha forever, so I called her and I said, you know, it would really be nice to have a permanent record of Ben's involvement with the community, because, you know, he and Lucille were Citizens of the Year for the Chamber of Commerce years ago. Lucille was very, very active in the community, in their church, the Methodist Church, Historical Society, during the Bicentennial, Bonneville Cabin, Old Settlers Association, all that stuff.
And I think that's how most of us knew him, was his interest in history, the museum, historical facts, and collecting antiques and things.
And if anybody had a question about Fairfield history, Ben either knew it or could tell you who did, or had a book that would tell you. So he and Lucille both, and I hasten to mention Lucille's name too, because they really were a team.
Yes.
And of course she passed away first, and we want to remember her, but specifically Ben left this huge body of work, many pieces of which were sold at his estate sale.
Of which I was thrilled
Yeah?
to get several, and I have some mounted and framed
Great.
and hanging in my home.
Great.
They're absolutely wonderful. I just wish that I would have known that he was such a terrific artist before he passed away.
Yeah. So anyway, but a lot of these things were just hidden away for probably 50, 60 years in boxes and funny portfolios. They were just most anything.
Well,
big pieces of cardboard. We'll just show them. Yeah.
Let's talk about this one, for instance. It looks to me like almost the back piece of cardboard of something that he's done this wonderful drawing.
And it's nice because it is signed. A lot of his things were not signed, especially the later things. This is dated at first, I thought 1920, but that would have only made him, what, 12 years old, and I don't think that's true. 28 or 29, I think it's a stylized 9.
And this is a self-portrait?
Self-portrait. The back of it has an inscription, and it says that he looked in a mirror. He had 2 mirrors so that he could see his profile, and then he drew this in pen and ink, and it appears to be right, just straight pen and ink, no preliminary pencil sketching. So that's to his credit. It's very clean, sure line, and really quite a good likeness. So that's why we started with this, because it's his self-portrait.
Now let's switch to some photographs just to show. Mark, tell us about this. This is a real treasure.
Isn't this a scream? There were a whole pile of these. This is Ben's birth announcement, and I'm guessing his father must have had a sense of humor. And you know, Ben had a real dry, kind of ornery sense of humor.
Yes.
And here you have this goony old Stork, and baby Ben, and Benjamin John Taylor arrived April 3rd, 1908, Fairfield, Iowa. And these are his parents in the background, Dean and Jessie Taylor. Jessie Taylor was remembered for a ladies' circle at the Methodist Church, the Jessie Taylor Circle, that was active for years and years. And I don't know if it's still active or not, but I know it was just a few years ago still. But she was real active in that church. And Dean worked at the newspaper. Is that his dad? Did I say Dean?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm saying Dean Gabbard, because he worked at the paper.
Right.
And Ben eventually worked at the paper also. He was the advertising person. And there was a long association with the Ledger. And I think they came from Pennsylvania. I'm getting all this secondhand. If anybody disputes any facts, it's because I didn't remember what Martha Flinschba told me. So call Martha if you want good verification, because she was much closer to Ben than I. And of course Fred as well. But this really is charming.
It certainly is.
And we plan on adding this to a little scrapbook that is being compiled for the museum. We have pictures of his auction that I photographed, and photos of the interior of their home with some of the antiques that they had, some of his collections like the quilts and coverlets and so forth, so that we'll have a good record in the museum archive of Ben and Lucille's life.
So he's actually become a real part of the history of Fairfield.
Yeah, oh yeah. And you know, he and Dr. Sells, Paul Sells, worked a lot in rehabbing or revamping the museum.
For many years.
Oh yeah, they built or rebuilt display cases and redesigned some of the exhibits. And of course we're going to try to maintain as much of their work as possible as the museum, you know, progresses in its history.
Okay, we'll take a look at another picture. I wish I had a photo of myself like this.
Really?
A budding artist.
Isn't this great? It's a little overexposed in the bottom. It appears that it was taken in sunlight next to a window or whatever. But some of these toys that are around the table are identifiable in a picture that we have of a Christmas tree. And Ben is being surrounded by those, and I think he has a pencil in his hand, and he's coloring, and he still had this table. In fact, Dot Hellkamp was telling me that one day Ben fished this photograph out and showed it to her and said, "See that table in the living room? They used it as an end table by the couch."
Oh, wow.
So there, you know, I mean, I can understand it. I hang on to stuff like that too. So
yes.
I think he was very, very sentimental.
Now, I'm guessing that his parents were very supportive of his art career, providing him with these artistic tools at such a young age. And then from what I understand, they sent him to Europe.
Yes, I think when he was a young man, either after high school or during a college sabbatical, he spent time in Paris and so forth. And
which will be evident in some
yeah,
of the
we'll
work.
see some of his work from that period. Yeah, this is a sweet little photograph. And there were multiple copies of this.
Okay.
Here is Ben with his younger brother, James. Just a typical studio portrait. And I really don't know much about his brother. Part of the photograph collection that we'll have in our scrapbook will show Ben as best man at his brother's wedding and some things like that. And there's a fun little photograph you'll see later with James as an adult. But there's a lot of informal shots of them with their toys. They had a little terrier dog. It's a little toy dog. I don't think we're going to show that, but a really nice little toy. I mean, if that was on the auction block today, it'd be worth a mint. And it appeared that they took good care of it because it's in several photographs and it always looks pristine. But you see that same dog in family photo. I mean, a live dog, a live version of this terrier, whatever kind it is, on the rug in front of the sofa. So there was this crossover between the real and the and the fantastic, I guess. This shows Ben as a young man. I think probably a high school graduation picture.
This is close to that self-portrait
Yes,
that we started with.
this would be about that same time, and rather dapper.
Handsome.
Yes.
When I knew him, he was kind of old and crotchety.
Yeah,
he was
bushy eyebrows, really bushy eyebrows.
Yes.
But he still had an interesting sense of humor, and he was real deadpan. You'd think he was chewing you out about something, and you think, oh no, that's a joke.
That's probably why I thought he was like that.
Yeah.
I just didn't
hard,
get it.
kind of hard to read, and he was his own person, and people that knew him, they knew him, and he was just who he was. So it's interesting to see him with the years peeled away.
And we'll see him age in the next photograph.
Here's a shot of his brother James as an adult, horsing around with a self-portrait that Ben had done.
Holding a tie in front of him.
Yes, because I don't think there was a tie in the picture. He was just in a shirt, maybe a sweater. And I don't think I pulled this for the collection. It was kind of a big picture. We might have kept it for the museum. I can't remember. But anyway, kind of a big oil painting with books on shelves behind him. And a good likeness here again. And no tie. And so here James is horsing around with an actual plaid tie. And Ben had a lot of plaid ties. And Will Page,
trademark.
Yeah, Will Page could tell you about that. Will was close to Ben and Lucille, and enjoys the Scottish dancing and so forth. So Martha made sure he got one of the. Well, Martha made sure Will got some of the ties that he had given to Ben.
Oh, how nice!
So so there were little mementos that came back to people like that. But here James is horsing around, kind of like that Stork picture in the birth announcement. There must have been this kind of playful, goofy family sense of humor that runs through these photos. Okay, this is Ben and Lucille on their wedding day. And I believe they were married in the 40s after the war. Ben, I believe, was stationed in New York City, and he did graphic design for the War Department, illustrated training manuals. And it seems like we had a program at the museum about World War II. We had some veterans share some memories. And it seems like Ben had some of these old manuals, and he showed us the pictures that he did.
We'll have to show that show again on FPAC.
I think.
We do have that.
I may be mistaken. It may not have been his actual drawings, but as I recall, that's what he did. And here again, correct me if I'm wrong out there, viewers. And I'm not sure where they were married. That's not a building in Fairfield, I don't believe. But Ben doesn't have quite as much hair in this picture, but that happens to some of us.
Yes. This is our last photo.
Yes, and this is the Ben and Lucille Taylor most of us remember. This was done as a Christmas card back in the early 70s. And it was funny, they kept all the proofs. This is the one, the tag that is stuck to the back of it is for the printer. And they had some, what do you call it? They screened it. Anyway, the way they used to do.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, this is Ben and Lucille in their living room with a roaring fire. The picture above Ben's head is a big engraving of some sort that shows Lincoln with his cabinet. And Ben had an extensive Lincoln collection. which he willed to the Lincoln Museum in Indiana, I believe. And I always thought it was weird that there was a Lincoln Museum in Indiana, but the reason for that is it was the Lincoln Insurance Company.
Oh, okay.
And they had written to Robert Lincoln, who was Lincoln's son back in the teens or the 20s or whatever, and asked permission to use the Lincoln name on their insurance logo. And Robert Lincoln was so grateful that they actually asked permission that he gave them some documents or photographs or whatever, a few Lincoln mementos. And that's what got the Lincoln collection started with this insurance company. And Joni Flinschba, Martha and Fred's daughter, is the curator there, and she may be the director, I can't remember. But that's the connection that Ben had with that. And so they got all the Lincoln stuff lock, stock, and barrel. One of which was an autographed photo of Lincoln with the letter from the lady to whom Lincoln gave the photo as a little girl. And it's real unusual in that it has that documentation, plus photographs were not autographed at that time very often. So it's very, 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 very rare, and probably worth as much as the rest of the Lincoln collection put together. But he had all kinds of stuff. Currier and Ives prints, an entire series of maybe 30 postcards, like chromolithograph embossed cards from about the time of the Lincoln Centennial, about 1907, that showed the life of Lincoln. And, and then like Avon perfume,
Lincoln.
Avon bottles with a Lincoln bust.
We did do a show
goofy
with
stuff like that.
Ben and Lee Gobble, his good friend, on Lincoln. The year that Ben ended up passing away, and so that's another treasure that we have that we'll share with the community on FPAC.
Great. So that's Ben and Lucille, and he's seated on the little Victorian sofa that was in his mother's house. They had a bedroom set and a rocker, and there were several pieces, a display cabinet, several pieces that had been in his parents' house. And then the little picture above the fireplace is a Raphael Madonna. And one of the photographs that shows some of these pieces in the Taylor home, as Ben's childhood home, shows that picture or a copy of it in one of the bedrooms. So there must have been a connection with that Madonna. It might have been, maybe his mother's favorite or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's all these little things
that show up in this photo that just mean so much.
But this is Ben and Lucille graciously, genteelly whiling away the hours for their Christmas card. So.
Well, we'll start sharing some of his art collection, and like we said, it's in no particular order as far as media or date or anything else. We'll just let Mark tell you some of the things that we know about it.
Yeah, the title is Nonavanna. Must be a literary reference. And it is signed 1928. Very, very nice.
Etching?
I think it's a pen and ink, maybe brush and ink drawing. There's some gray wash on the woman's dress, but it's really quite nice. And I don't know if it's based on a character, in a photograph, like from a play, or if it's from another illustration, or what it is. But it's really kind of a nice drawing. And the way he's framed it with the black line is handsome, and the artful overlapping of his signature with that border. It's a young man trying to really make a distinct kind of impression.
He did.
Yeah.
Although a lot of the things you can see were thumbtacked.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they were on display.
So we'll get that covered up and put some archival backing on it, and it'll be in good shape. It'll be great. Did we mention that the Art Association will actually have is it our first show this fall?
Yes, in the beginning of the opening season of 2001.
Okay.
We will feature his collection as our opening show.
Okay. This is a piece that was done in New York City when he was stationed there during the war. And Ben had a real fondness for boats. I mean, he really had lots of interests. If any of you went to his auction, you saw some ships models, wooden sailing ships that he made.
I didn't know that. I saw him, but I didn't know that he made them.
The biggest one had a little snapshot of him holding it on the balcony of his mother's house.
Wow.
So his mother's house was on the, is it Briggs? The east-west street just across from the Bethany home, county corner from that. Second house from whatever street that is, 2nd Street, I can't remember.
Okay.
Anyhow.
Now, some of his work that we have in the collection, it looks like is in different stages of completion. So I'm not sure. Do you think that's a beginning, a middle?
Well, it appears that he did studies for things, like what we have one that's...
So there's several sometimes.
Yeah, and this one I know there were several versions of this. Sometimes the bridge was a little more evident in the composition. Sometimes the lighthouse was bigger. I picked this one. I felt like it was the best of the series. I tried to pick out the things that were, the cream of the crop. I mean, I didn't pick out everything, obviously, because there were some really good things that I don't think I even saw, because Martha kept finding stuff. But you have some nice layers of wash all around here in the corner by the grid work on the bridge, and the suggestion of that.
Tough subject, I think.
The suggestion of that barge in the distance on the river. And I think that might be the George Washington Bridge, but I wouldn't swear to it.
Now, we were talking about some of the work being in different stages of completion. Over here, we see just the pencil drawing, and that he did not get to. Boy, when people get to my stuff and maybe your stuff, they're going to find all kinds of things that are unfinished.
But that shows that he really did have a very carefully rendered, maybe not rendered drawing, but carefully mapped out forms. And I remember there were several versions of this one too. But some very nice, it's controlled but it's fresh as far as the way the paint is applied on the detailing, the layers of shadows on the building and so forth.
And the sky, that, like you said, the fresh.
It's nice wet on wet.
Yes, wonderful up there, and yet the tiny brick detail down below.
Yeah.
He was very talented.
Yeah. Martha let me have his paintbrushes. So I'm keeping them in the box they were in, and I use them once in a while. So that's
how nice.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. I might give you one, Susan.
Oh.
You know what? It might be kind of cool
to have one of those in the show.
And maybe even have like a little, have them incorporated in the framing.
That's a great idea.
We'll do that. Okay.
We like to think of things.
We'll do that.
Even on camera.
Yeah, because I won't be able to use all of them, but
okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds great.
That'd be great.
Now we have two paintings here. Same house, different angles.
And this is a good example of why you want to have ultraviolet filtered glass, because I'm assuming he used the same palette for both paintings, and this one that Susan has in her hands is very faded. It's the William Van Cortlandt house, and it's dated 1945. So this must have been done when Ben was in New York in the service. And it's interesting because it's two different angles of the same building. Did you say that already?
It is. It's nice. And there might even be more. And one of the ones that I purchased at the auction might be this also.
Really? But the one that Susan is holding, that's the one that Ben had, one of a pair that were in the Taylor living room.
Okay.
It was right inside the door as you came in the front hall on the north wall.
Wonderful colors.
Aren't they beautiful?
Yes.
This was fun. This is the other one that hung in the Taylor living room. And what does it call it? The Jumel Mansion, also 1945. And some really nice colors in that little kind of rust and amber tree in the front. But if you flip it over, we have documentation on the back.
The historian in him.
Yeah, it's like their grandfather clock had a whole bunch of stuff stuffed in the case that told about the maker and other clocks by that same person.
What a good thing to do. Good intentions by me, but I never get it done.
Yes, there you go. And it says, Mama enjoyed going through the Jumel Mansion. This is grandmother somebody. I mean, just everything was sort of documented. And an old postcard. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff he did.
Did Ben have a thing for horses?
Well, I don't know. These are the only horses I found in the entire collection. I think these would look nice, all three in one frame.
I think that's what we have planned to do.
Good. And I don't, I'm speaking out of turns here. I don't know if the library would be interested or if the Art Association wants to do this. But the library has the Pat Schreiner paintings of horses in that large meeting room with the big oil of the blacksmith shop. And this might be a nice accent piece for that room,
That's a great idea.
if the library is interested. I know the library has 2 or 3 little paintings
By Ben?
by Ben that I took directly to them. They were already framed, and they were framed in a style that's reminiscent of the Shriner paintings that are already there. And since Ben was on the library board for many years, you know, I felt like that was appropriate. And I don't know if they've hung them yet or not, but these are nice little photographs.
And once again,
watercolors.
the wonderful freedom of the watercolor,
Yeah,
and yet
these are good.
the wonderful control also.
These are very good. Well, we weren't kidding when we said these weren't in any particular order.
Because we just uncovered
Shame on us.
miniatures.
Yeah. Of the Van Cortlandt house and the other one that I don't remember what the name of it was. But
So you think these were studies for the others?
they must have been, yeah. And for my money, that other one it's a better painting than the big one.
Very nice detail.
Yeah, beautifully done.
Also, I suppose you didn't always have a camera then.
No,
It wasn't as easy
Yeah.
to.
but these are very sweet.
Really nice. And we can read something there.
Oh, that's
You
right.
can read
That's
something
right.
there, not me.
But you know what? I'm going to take my glasses off, and I'm still going to read it. Aren't I naughty? Anyway.
Yes, you are.
Anyway, it's been a long day, folks. We just did art camp. We probably shouldn't have even thought about this today. No, Cranberry Liz is the name of this little tugboat, and I'll bet you anything Ben got a kick out of that name. I'll bet that's why he painted it, if nothing else. But Ben J. Taylor, October 45, New York City, or NYC, and then U.S. Navy Reserve, I guess, R, USNR.
And below it, a wonderful.
Oh, these are great little paintings.
The
They're
water
very
is just
sweet.
fabulous. And again, I think just a sketch and not completed. And these little pieces, I imagine, could be even scraps that you just
Sure.
Ben just had.
I'll bet. Well, and the reason I picked these out, there were several versions of that tugboat, and also several tankers or whatever that other thing is. I picked these out because the boats really looked like they were floating in the water.
Not just
Some of them
sitting on the paper.
Yeah, some of them just looked they were kind of sitting on, they weren't floating somehow. And these, you really felt like they were in the water. And I felt like we wanted to have something that best what's the word I want? Was most emblematic, I guess, of Ben's talent. So that's why I picked these particular ones. Well, we have Ben's little monogram, which is really quite nice.
1926.
1926, so he was just a baby. 1926 minus 1908, you do the math. Anyway, Iowa State.
And these are oils.
Yes, these are oils. So this is when he was really young. This is an Iowa State Fair tag, oil painting, a picnic.
So he obviously took this to the state fair, entered it in the art show, which I have done.
And you can see where it was in a frame. You can see the little nail scars in the back.
Oh, you're a detective.
There you go.
And let's see the front of it.
And, you know, kind of a heavy Impressionist style. But nicely.
Definitely.
Yeah, but nicely done.
And I did get one piece similar to this at the auction that I really like.
And this was probably very hip for the day because Impressionism had come to America by this time. And for a young man from Podunk, Iowa, to paint like the Impressionists in the 20s was probably very, very with
Now,
it.
I wonder if he had been to Europe by then.
He might have been. I don't know. I wish
some influence.
I wish I had found out what exact years. You know, I don't know if we have any of the European stuff.
Too bad we don't have a journal.
Yeah. But these are very nice. They're
Kind
nicely
of a
done.
journal in its own.
This one, I don't know if there's a title. Nope, just a size. But a limited palette, and he does a lot with it. Okay, we have a pen and ink a study of the artist, and darn it, I can pronounce almost every artist that you can name.
Except this one.
But Augustus Saint-Gaudens,
Good enough.
and I'm familiar with him, Gaudens, and Ben has written up a little biography on the back, 1848 to 1907, an American sculptor born in Dublin, His mother was Irish and his father a French shoemaker. He settled in New York after studying at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris and Rome, 1870 to 73. No citizen of America was more eminent than this guy in his art. He carved statues of Admiral Farragut in 1881, Lincoln in 1887, the famous General Sherman statue in 1903, and also Hiawatha and Grief. And that's a notation from the Popular Encyclopedia. So evidently,
and then we have
the study, and then the oil, the finished oil, with a funny little cardboard tab on the top so you could hang it.
So obviously this was an artist that was a great influence.
Yeah, and he had a lot of famous people. Theodore Roosevelt, there was a beautiful paper mosaic in the auction, and I almost kept it, and then I thought, I
thought one of those mosaics, they were so unusual.
They were beautifully done, but unless you had a real thing for Theodore Roosevelt, and I couldn't think of a way to use it in the museum, so I just...
Right. It was, for me, it was just the mosaic and the process of using that. It was wonderful.
But it seems like this is a copy of a painting. It seems like I've seen this painting somewhere. But even so, it's very nice.
Yes.
An excellent likeness of George Bernard Shaw, even if you didn't see the label, I mean, and you knew what he looked like.
I love these straight, stark marks of hair.
You know what? Those are pasted.
Well, maybe we did get some collage
That is
type.
Yeah, that's a little collage mosaic
I
effect.
just was feeling that, and
cool.
It's wonderful.
Basically, it's ink. Looks like brush and ink with some collage. He probably painted that black and then didn't like it, so he collaged over it. We'll have to try that sometime.
Yes, what a wonderful artist doing those things.
Yeah, that's neat. And it plays so nicely with this rough area down here.
Very strong picture.
1921 or 27. It has to be 27.
He was too young.
21. Unless he was a real genius. So. Okay, and this next one is 1927. The backs are so funny. Look at this. It's got that, it's like adhesive tape. Not
medical kind of tape.
Not archival by any stretch. Ben J. Taylor, 1927, From Life. And there's an R. I mean, we could steam that off or something and find out what else is written. But
so are you really bad at doing things like this?
Oh no, not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
Okay.
No. No. And our cameraman was mentioning that it looked like a Van Gogh, and yes, it does. If you're familiar with Van Gogh's Potato Eaters and some of those really early pieces that Van Gogh did, it's a very similar palette. That same kind of heavy, dramatic brushstroke, kind of a directional surface contour kind of approach, and dramatic lighting. But that's a nice little piece. I'm not sure we'll want to put that in a hospital room.
Maybe not.
It wouldn't be very encouraging to me if I was on the mend.
It looks a little pale and yellow.
But it's a nice painting. It's a nice painting. This is a portrait of Ben's dad, Dean Taylor, 1928. So he would have just been around 20 years old. And here again, very evident brushstroke, but a good likeness and nicely done. The label on the back of this frame says something about an art dealer in San Francisco.
Just a little tiny sticker.
So maybe he was stationed there and he had this framed, or maybe it's something he bought and it's not his at all. We don't know. Because he didn't sign. There are a lot of things he did not sign. But it looks like his early style. It has that heavy impasto paint. The color palette is a little different, but then it's in California, so that's understandable. But it's a nice little seascape. Now, what a Navy man is doing in Farragut, Idaho is beyond me. Maybe he was on leave. But it says, from my barracks at Farragut, Idaho, July 1944. And it appears to be watercolor with some pen and ink detailing. And it's very nice.
This is a terrific little picture.
And a funny old-fashioned frame. Ben had this workroom. And they say that Lucille didn't even go into it. And I always thought it was just a closet at the end of the hall. And I wasn't at their house a lot, but enough that I was familiar with the layout. But you went in the front hall, and there was this door at the end, and I just thought, yeah, that's just a closet. Well,
secret.
It was this, I think it used to be the kitchen. That's why Lucille cooked in that little pantry, like, they had a little galley kitchen. Well, that's why. That thing was piled floor to ceiling with old chairs and bookcases and shelves and lamp parts and old chandeliers and clock parts. And then there were these kind of slots with frames of different sizes, just dozens of them.
All of his projects.
Yeah, and you know, gold leafing and miter boxes and cigar boxes labeled with all, you know, nuts and bolts and curtain rings and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm guessing that this frame was from that little cache of different frames that he had. But.
And we were thinking we probably will keep this one in this frame.
Yeah.
It looks too nice.
And it's a neat little frame. But I'm guessing it's from the 20s. It was an old frame probably when he stuck it in there. But it's nice. I think the reason I picked this one is that there was such a nice sense of depth with the kind of the lightly defined house in the distance and then this more precisely defined tree in the foreground. But there's some some subtle textures and value gradations that are good.
Yes, and here, this is great.
Yep, it's very sweet. But here again, it's not signed. We don't know where it is. It's not a Fairfield home, but I'm guessing this is from the 40s when he was in the service. So we have a series of boats. We have horses, portraits, and famous buildings.
And oil and watercolor, a little bit of collage, pen and ink.
You know why I didn't pick, I guess I remember now why I didn't pick anything from the European stuff. So many of them were so large. And I guess I was afraid that would be awkward in a hospital setting. So I was really picking these in thinking of
maintaining and taking care of also.
Yeah, the permanent collection. And I mean, it's going to be a pretty big undertaking framing what we do have. But
yes, it is.
It's still very representative. But he did some Parisian cafe scenes.
I've got two of those. Yes, hanging in my kitchen. I
really?
just love
good.
My favorites.
You know, and Notre Dame and the Arc de Triomphe and all, you know, the Champs-Élysées, all that stuff. And then some things from England, I think. I can't remember. But they were fun. They were fun to go through.
Yes.
And I just felt it was really a precious time for me because I wasn't close to Ben, but he was the kind of person that you liked having around. You just liked knowing that he was down the street breathing the same air.
Oh, he knew so much.
Yeah.
If you had a question, you always would call Ben and you'd
know
the answer probably.
Yeah. So this was a good kind of, I don't know if I call it grieving exactly, but this was kind of a way of saying goodbye.
And also, I'm sure you got to know him.
Yeah. It's just neat.
By doing this.
And you know, sometimes when you look at somebody on the street, or I do this in the classroom, a kid will turn his head or her head, and you'll just have a flash, and you're like, oh, that's what they looked like when they were 5, or oh, that's what they're going to look like when they're 40 or 80. And it's just fun, like looking at his childhood pictures and seeing the Ben Taylor that I knew in his 70s and his 90s. And it's just fun to, look into a person's soul the way we've gotten to do with this. So,
I think so too. And I think we'll see some more of that in the next things we look at.
Okay.
Here we have a house. Do you know anything about this house?
Is anything on the back?
For some reason we have this in the collection, whether this was his family home.
It must be. It must be there by mistake. I don't think it's. I don't know why it's there.
Well, that's a mystery. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, if anybody knows what that house is. I remember that house. I looked in that old accordion souvenir book from the 1890s, and it's not one of those houses, and I thought it might be. Oh, that's right. I forgot about this.
This is a real treasure, and we're not sure how we're going to frame it. And we have a letter that goes with it.
Oh, yeah, I'll read that, will you?
And let's see, I'm going to have to
Okay,
move
this is
these.
dated August 13th, 1927, so Ben was 19. It's to George Reams, Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce. I hand you herewith sketches of my design for the panels you suggested. The panels are to be 6.5 by 4 feet, and the scale is 1 foot to the inch. Better proportions are secured by making a panel at the bottom to be finished the same way as wood. Also, a narrow panel at the top to be finished the same as the picture. Oak strips or flat molding, I believe, would make a very pleasing effect around the edge, but yellow pine would be less expensive. The painting of such panels in oil could be done either before or after the screen is built. I would prefer to do the painting before the screen is built. I would be very pleased to have the opportunity to do this work for you, and any suggestion as to design you desire to make would be carried out. I believe burlap could be glued on the lower panels so as to give it a different surface from the others. I do not want to build the screens. Ben Taylor.
How old was he?
1927, he would have been about 19, late 18 or 19.
This is really amazing
these are very
that
nice.
he put this together for the city of Fairfield at that young age. I mean, look at that. This is the same as today when we talk about what represents Fairfield. You've got the industry, education, and
The Barhite Chapel.
Barhite, of course, and recreation, the past.
And the Bonneville cabin, the old settler's cabin, which of course, like we said, Ben was very active in preserving.
Yes, and what is this one?
The county hospital. So that's neat. And he didn't put periods at the end of each sentence, he put a little X. I'm guessing that's the young artiste spreading his wings and letting himself be known.
So this was amazing to me when I saw this the other day.
These are neat.
But to know that he was only 19 when he did it is
that's neat. That's neat.
fabulous.
So is
So
that's the collection?
yeah, so that is a collection that the Fairfield Art Association has, thanks to you and from his estate.
Yes, and we want to thank Martha Flinschba for her cooperation. I mean, she worked like a trooper going through his stuff. I mean,
Major
oh
job.
my goodness, the piles. But, and they saved everything. They had the funeral card for every funeral they'd ever been to.
Oh dear. I'm guilty.
Are you? Okay.
I'm guilty.
But there were just reams of stuff, and it was all of it was fascinating. So, and so many threads of interest.
Yes. And we are really thrilled to have this and to be matting and framing it very soon for our opening show. And then we'll be at the hospital on permanent loan from the Art Association's collection. And thank you, Mark, for being here to tell about some of the history and information that I didn't know about.
And I apologize if I got any of the dates wrong, but it's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And I didn't get choked up this time. When I talked about Ben at his auction, oh gosh, there were a couple of times I was really getting kind of...
It's too soon.
Oh, it
maybe.
was, because talking to his niece and talking about Lucille, and she was such a wonderful person too. And, you know, every time I look at our rhododendron bush, I think of Lucille because she complimented us on it the year we put it out. I mean, she was just that kind of person.
Yes.
So,
well, it's nice to have this piece of history from Ben Taylor, who is a piece of history himself.
you betcha.
And a treasure to our community. And we hope that the Fairfield community will continue to enjoy it.
Great. Well, thanks for watching FPAC.
Thanks. I'm sorry, we have one more thing.
Oh, that's
one more thing.
Oh my gosh.
How could I forget? My
We've
cameraman
got Ben. Ben is here
reminded
with us.
And we'll close out with this. This is kind of how I remembered him. I don't know when he did it. Do you know?
Is this by Chris? Did Chris Bennett do this?
I don't know. Maybe it is.
It looks like Chris's stuff.
It looks like Chris Bennett's work of...
Oh, I'm sure it is. I know it is.
Okay.
It's a portrait of Ben.
I wonder if these were Ben's glasses.
I think they are, yeah.
So here we have Ben Taylor.
Not in the flesh, but certainly in spirit.
Yes.